Good evening, board members and residents. I'd like to call to order our regular board meeting for Monday, May 9th, 2016, and I'd ask everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call?
Yes, Mr. Batanti.
Here.
Mr. Brado is asked to be excused. Mr. Caprell.
Here.
Mr. Tominello.
Here.
Mr. York is asked to be excused. Mr. Witt, here. Mr. Verkust.
Here. Thank you. Next on our agenda is the approval of the consent agenda, including approval of the regular board meeting minutes of April 25th, 2016, approval of the bills in the amount of $407,648.39, and approval to purchase 2 Trimble Nomad GLD handheld computers for meter reading device installations in the amount of $6,450. Be looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Supervisor, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the bills in the amount of $407,648.39.
All right, is there support?
Support.
All right, we've got a motion by Mr. Tominello, with support by Mr. Batanti. Any discussion, board members? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Next on our agenda is the approval of the regular agenda. Board members, item E3 was a request, it was basically a placekeeper. Approval to hire an admin clerk in the Water and Sewer Department. We have conducted interviews, but at this time we are not prepared to bring someone forward on that, so I'm asking that we remove item E3, but otherwise be looking for a motion to approve the agenda with that one revision.
Make a motion to approve the agenda with the removal of item E3.
All right, is there support?
Support.
Got a motion by Mr. Batanti with support by Mr. Caprell to approve the agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thanks. Next is announcements. I do have a few announcements. The Harrison Township summer shuttle season has started. If you need a ride anywhere in the township on the weekends, please call 586-612-4454 for a free ride. The hours of the summer shuttle are on Fridays from 5 p.m. until midnight, on Saturdays from 9 a.m. until midnight, and on Sundays from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. The Boattown Nautical Coast Cleanup will be held this weekend, actually May 13th through 15th. We invite everyone to come to help clean up our shoreline. There's morning and evening or afternoon cleanup times available. There's flexible work hours, so we're looking for volunteers. For more information or to pre-register, you can call 469-1919 or 466-1445. Just double check that. Yep. Okay. Harrison Township Public Library, in cooperation with State Representative Anthony Ferlini, will be hosting a free document shredding on Friday, May 20th from 4 until 6 p.m. at the Harrison Township Public Library. This is a great way to avoid identity theft and dispose of old documents safely. Free shredding includes up to 2 standard size bags or boxes, like a business banker's box, 15 by 12 by 10, and that's per person. If you have additional boxes per person, there is a $5 fee. Plastic material is not accepted, and if you have any questions or need additional information, you can contact the library, 586-329-1261. For upcoming library events, you can visit the website for the library, htlibrary, hdlibrary.org. You can follow them on Twitter, at Harrison TWPLIB. And for information on the township's events, you can call the supervisor's office, 586-466-1445. You can visit our website, harrison-township.org. And also you can follow us on Twitter at Harrison TWPMI. Any other announcements?
Mr. Supervisor, if I may, just want to make an announcement for the Huron Point subdivision. The Huron Point subdivision is holding their annual whole subdivision garage sale. That's this weekend, May 13th, 14th, and 15th, from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Good. And then, is there value in mentioning anything about navigability under the bridge, or?
There's signs, and we put out, the homeowners put out additional signs.
Okay,
which we
good. All right, excellent.
I do have one announcement for the Harrison Township Parks and Recreation Committee. We have our annual fishing derby, which is going to be held June 11th at Lake St. Clair Metro Park. It starts at 8 o'clock and goes to 11 o'clock. There are 3 different age groups, 5 to 8, 9 to 12-year-old, and 13 to 16-year-old. There are prizes, hot dogs, drinks. Like to see all the young fishermen out there, and it's a free event other than the cost to get into the park. And the township does provide seasonal passes at the clerk's office, so if you have any questions about the event, it'll be posted on the website, and I'd be happy to take any phone calls about the event.
All right, good. Okay. If there's no other announcements, we'll move forward with our agenda. Item B, adoption of a resolution to declare the month of May Huntington's Disease Awareness Month in Harrison Township. Board members, I'd like to read the following resolution. Whereas Huntington's disease is a rare genetic and fatal brain disease with psychiatric and movement manifestations, with symptoms including cognitive impairment, behavior, mood, and movement disorders. And whereas Huntington's disease is passed down generation to generation, with the mutated gene expanding each generation, causing earlier onset of the symptoms, causing fear and devastation throughout families. And whereas more than 30,000 individuals have Huntington's disease in the United States, of which 5% are juveniles. And whereas Help for HD, Huntington's Disease International, founded in 2010, is a 501c3 charity with a mission to educate the world about Huntington's disease, to bring vital and credible information, education, and resources to the community, as well as to medical professionals. And whereas Help for HD International has organized the month of May as Huntington's Disease Awareness Month to generate awareness about Huntington's and juvenile Huntington's disease, raise funding for services, and encourage research into a cure for HD. And whereas Help for HD International and the families and friends of those with HD and juvenile HD should be commended for their compassion, courage, and hard work, fundraising and educating the public. And now therefore be it resolved that the Harrison Township Board of Trustees declares May as Huntington's and Juvenile Huntington's Disease Awareness Month in Harrison Township. We do have a representative from our community present that would like to address the board, so I'll at this time invite up Steve and Tat Wolf to address the board.
Hi, thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk about Huntington's disease. You really covered quite a bit of it in the proclamation, so maybe I'll skip on to some of our personal trials and tribulations. Steve and I met in a support group, and both of our spouses, whom we had divorced, had Huntington's disease. There's a very high divorce rate with this disease because of the psychiatric symptoms. It's just, sometimes it's just unlivable. But anyway, both of our former spouses had it. I, for instance, have 2 adult sons. One tested recently negative, which was wonderful, and the other one has decided not to test. And Steve, his former wife, passed away about 5 years ago. They had 2 adult children also, but one tested positive and the other one is not tested yet. Like I said, there's a high rate of divorce. Steve's wife lost the house due to mismanagement of money and just totally ignored the situation. That's the apathy. just a lot of apathy with the disease. We eventually took her into our home for 5 years before she had to go into a nursing home because she had no place to go. My ex died, and she died 5 years ago. My ex died of June of this year.
Last year, June of last year.
June of last year, right. We have friends, dear friends, all over the world who we've lost to HD, and most people have never heard of it. And the only claim to fame we have is Woody Guthrie. He's the guy who wrote "This Land Is My Land" that all our kids learn about in 3rd or 4th grade. He had Huntington's disease, and I had never heard of it either. I had never heard of it, but I still to this day remember as a kid, or a teenager maybe, hearing on the news that Woody Guthrie was retiring because he did not want his fans to see him in this condition. And I remember thinking, what kind of disease would you not want, this famous person would not want his fans to see him as? Well, sadly, I found out what that was. And I have met his son, Arlo. He's a good fighter for spreading the word. He does not have it, but he has had a sister, at least one sister who had it. If you'd like to know more about the details of our lives and others' lives, you can go to our own library. I wrote a chapter in a book called Life Interrupted, edited by Sharon McClellan Tomlinson. I donated it to the library. I'm chapter 8. But it's stories from all walks of life from HD, from the caregivers to people with HD, juvenile HD. We've also lost a lot of good children with this disease. It's very sad. There's no cure, no treatment. I'd like to thank you again. Steve, do you have anything else to say?
Nope, you covered it well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Make a motion to adopt the resolution declaring May Huntington's Disease Awareness Month in Harrison Township as presented.
Support.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Witt with support by Mr. Tominello. It is truly, as the resident pointed out, it is something I'd never heard of. It's something very rare. And obviously, when you hear the symptoms and the conditions, a very tragic disease, and only further exaggerated by the fact that once you find out that that's the case, if you have children, now you live with the concern that they may have it as well. So I can't begin to imagine. If there's no other comment, Mr. Witt, will you please take a roll call?
Mr. Witt, yes. Mr. Tominello?
Yes.
Mr. Batanti?
Yes.
Mr. Brado is excused. Mr. Capral?
Yes.
Mr. York is excused. Mr. Verkest?
Yes. You'll prepare a resolution in the event that you'd like one, and maybe to present it to Help for HD. I don't know if that's a wish you have, but
We can make a formal copy for you on
Thank you.
nice paper.
I would like that.
and prepare that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda, item C1 is from the clerk's office. Mr. Witt.
Yes, the clerk's office has received a request from Mr. Kerry Reedy, the new owner of Mac Rays, for the transfer of their Class C and SDM license at the banquet facility and restaurant, and also the transfer of their SDM license for the marina location. They're two separate licenses. Although local approval isn't required by the state, they are required to go through and make sure they're in compliance with local building, plumbing, zoning laws, health laws, that kind of stuff. So the building department's gone through, the fire department's gone through, everything's in order to recommend approval of the transfer of these licenses. And although it's listed as one motion on here, we would need to do two separate motions because they're two separate licenses for the properties.
Any discussion, board members, or is there a motion?
Mr. Supervisor, just want to let you know that this was brought up in front of the Planning Commission. Planning Commission saw that there was no issues with the site. with the use, and it's a part of the existing PUD approval, and had no, no issues with the licenses, and we recommended approval at the planning commission level.
All right.
So I'll make a motion to recommend approval for the request from Harbor Restaurant Enterprises to transfer ownership of the 2015 Class C and specialty designated merchant licenses with 5 bars, Sunday sales permit, AM and PM, dance entertainment permit, specific purpose permit, food, and outdoor service 1 area.
I'll support that.
All right, we've got a motion by Mr. Witt, with support by Mr. Tominello. Any further discussion, board members? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call?
Mr. Witt, yes. Mr. Tominello?
Yes.
Mr. Batanti?
Yes.
Mr. Brotto is excused. Mr. Capral?
Yes.
Mr. York is excused. Mr. Verkast?
Yes. And I understand a second
The
motion
second,
is in
yeah, and
order?
I'll make a motion to recommend approval for the request from Harbor Restaurant Enterprise 2 to transfer 2015 SDM licensed business with Sunday sales permit AM, direct connection 1, and gas pumps marina located at 30675 North River Road, Harrison Township, Michigan, as presented.
Is there support?
Support.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Witt with support by Mr. Capral. Is there any discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, Mr. Witt, again, a roll call, please.
Mr. Witt, yes. Mr. Capral?
Yes.
Mr. Batanti?
Yes.
Mr. Brotto is excused. Mr. Tominello?
Yes.
Mr. York is excused. Mr. Verkast?
Yes. Thank you. I know that recently the folks at Back Rays have opened up their North 42, so there's a couple representatives also from the restaurant, and I was fortunate enough to dine there recently, had an excellent experience. So if folks haven't been at it's 7 days now? Yep, and a good menu, great menu. Everything I had was very good, so if you haven't been there in some time, I'd encourage folks at home to stop by North 42 at McRae Harbor. Thank you. Next on the agenda, item C2, also from the clerk's office, Mr. Witt.
Yes, as we discussed at our last board meeting, along Executive Drive, as part of the new road being installed, necessitates the installation of new street lighting. To accomplish that, we're going to be modifying the existing lighting special assessment for the district, and we need to hold a public hearing for the redetermination of the costs. In order to do that, we need to give the property owners, we need to hold a public hearing for the property owners to give them an opportunity to speak to the project. Before you tonight, we have a resolution to set that public hearing for June 13th, 2016 at our regular board meeting. So all tonight is just to set that public hearing date. We'll then notice it in the paper twice, send out first-class notification to the property owners so they have the opportunity to come to the meeting.
I'll make that motion.
All right, we got a motion by Mr. Tominello. Support. Support by Mr. Batanti. So again, this begins the process. We feel confident the business owners are receptive to this installation. This will begin the process of public hearing and notification. So, any discussion, board members? Hearing none, we'll open up the floor for public comment.
William Bardell, taxpayer, 19-year resident, new kid on the block. When Young Fang got their tax break on their $51 million in investment, at the meeting, it was stated that the road was going to be repaired and repaved. Now, I'm all about saving energy and the new lighting and everything, but something really big and with me is transparency. I'm all for these lights, but we were told at the meeting that all the business owners, everybody and their brother was contacting the State Economic Development Fund, and they were all in about this road and the lights and everything. So, could you, if you need, maybe you need to educate me a little bit on this, but I thought that the signatures were already had and everything's done, and you got 51% of the people. There was nothing said, Yongfang, when they did this, was gonna be repaving, repairing and repaving. And then I heard basically that they were gonna widen one of the turns. So I would like a little bit of transparency on this. That's all I'm asking. You know, say what you mean and mean what you say. That's what I'm looking for. That's all I'm looking for.
Thank you.
Jim, Jim Senstock, 31698 CN1. When this thing with Yongfang went through as far as the tax abatement, that went through, and then as part of the enticing of this company come to Harrison Township, the state and the federal government decided they were going to widen Executive Drive. I guess the question I have is if it necessitates if it's necessary to widen the street, and as a result of that necessity, we have streetlights that have to come down and be put up. I guess I'm wondering why the $171,000 was not assessed against the state or the Macomb County. Why all of a sudden did you put it as a interfere or open up this tax area special assessment without ever contacting any of the residents? I believe that if we're going to do this, and obviously the lights have already come down, if we're going to do this, that the state or county or federal government should be paying for the cost. That was the cost of opening or redoing that road, not the business owners in the whole area who are not going to benefit other than Yangfang comes in with a great big tax abatement. One of the questions that comes to my mind immediately is part of the reason that we gave Yangfang a tax abatement was that they were going to hire Harrison Township residents. I'd be very curious to find out how many Harrison Township residents have been hired. I've not heard a word out of you guys, not heard a word from Yangfang, not anything in the paper. What benefit is it to Harrison Township? Lastly, I'm looking at this, and somebody can, and I'm sure you'll expand on it, Ken, so I'll ask that you expand on it. I'd like to know exactly where this particular special assessment district is. It looks like there's about, I don't know, 27, 30 businesses or so on. Are those only the ones on Executive Drive, or is the whole special assessment district for the whole area, the industrial area? Now, I have a real concern about that because I own buildings in that industrial area. And I've never heard a word about this. And I'm not going to pay for Yangfang to have fancy streetlights out there on their new wide road. So I'll be back at the next meeting, but I'd like to have some answers to those questions right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment, we'll close the floor for public comment. I'll do my best to answer questions. The first resident had asked about repairing and repaving Executive Drive and made a comment regarding transparency. So first, it's important to understand that just about the entire process that was associated with Executive Drive was handled by the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, working in conjunction with the Macomb County Planning and Economic Development. I certainly don't want to minimize our role. We're certainly supportive of this, but large corporations such as Yangfang, multi-state corporations, really multinational corporations, when they're going to make a large investment, in this case $51 million and upwards of potentially 500 jobs or some number like that, certainly substantial figures in both cases, they'll pit one state against another, and each state kind of goes to the brink to see just how much they'll put forward to try to land that work. So in this case, the Michigan EDC came up with a $2 million, what they call a mega grant, to pay for the reconstruction of the road. That certainly benefits all of Harrison Township that might travel that road, and the other business owners that occupy that road or have their businesses on that road. But it was done as one of the many things that the state put forward to try to encourage or entice young folk to make the investment in our area. The county agreed that they would pick up the balance of that, or at the time they looked at a $2 million grant with a $400,000 match. Now certainly, we can say that's great that federal dollars and state dollars and county dollars are doing it. No matter what dollars are spent on a road, in the end, we all know they come from us. There is no magic, jet coming in from Mars with gold. So this is all our money. Any projects that are public projects are ours. But if we don't work to secure those federal dollars, then they're spent in another community and we lose out completely. We still spend the $2 million, we just spend them in some other state. So, and certainly we like the idea of the dollars being spent here. In terms of transparency, there's never been any discussion that I'm aware of that didn't include widening and paving that road. The road is being completely removed and rebuilt. It's a concrete road and it's a heavy-duty or industrial-style road. So it's always been discussed to widen the road. The business owners were called into a meeting, well, at least 2 meetings that I recall last year, to discuss the special assessment district. Because currently, there is a special assessment district that's been around for, I'm not sure how long.
60s, 70s.
Yeah, so we're talking about a 40 to 50-year-old SAD, or Special Assessment District, where the business owners basically all agreed, or a majority of them agreed, to pay for the initial cost to install street lights, as well as the ongoing annual cost to maintain, to insure, to service, and of course to power those lights. So that's a decision that they make, not unlike what many subdivisions, certainly the newer subdivisions in our community, have done, where they say, we'd like street lights. They separately arrange with DTE. DTE sends us a bill. We take that bill, divide that by each property owner, and on your taxes, you'll see if you are in that district, such as on Canterbury, Brigantine Estates. Those are 2 recent neighborhoods that have lighting districts. So these business owners or their predecessors agreed to have the district, have continued to pay for it. And during meetings, during the pre-construction phase meetings and design meetings with the Department of Roads, we're notified of the option of having those lights replaced, and everyone that was at the meeting was in favor. Another question was asked, why was $171,000 not assessed against MCDOR or the state? So first of all, I think the total cost for installation is $114,000. So the cost for installation, for removal and installation, is quite a bit less. But the state in that process does not assume responsibility of the special assessment district. They're widening the road. In order to widen the road, the lights are in that right of way. The county has the right to widen the road. So they say, we're knocking those lights out. What do you guys want to do? Widening the road in the other direction would be counterproductive because there are utilities there, and certainly the last thing we want to do is cover up utilities with a heavy, brand-new concrete road that has to be torn up in the event that there's a water main break. So the state does not, to my knowledge, participate in special assessment districts. A comment was made, how come we weren't contacting the residents? It's important that everybody in Harrison Township does not participate in this. The only people who participate are the business owners in that immediate area, in that district. So they are the ones who will be contacted. We're not only sending out notices in the paper, but each of them is going to receive a first-class letter per state law so that they know that we're having this public hearing. Here are the facts, here are the details. Now's your chance to come and say, I'm against it or I'm for it. But in conversation with certainly more than a dozen of the business owners, probably more than 24 of the business owners, I've yet to encounter any one of them who's expressed any concern about removing the lights. Rather, their only concern was, how long are we going to be without lights, because those lights do provide a certain amount of security. And considering the volume, the size of their business, the expense that they've invested in there, you know, this cost is a nominal cost in comparison to what their monthly cash flow is. So we have contacted the residents, or I'd say the property owners in that district, and we'll do so formally. That's what this public hearing is for. There was something stated which I can certainly say I don't recall. Perhaps there's a misunderstanding there. There was, as a part of this whole process, the state and the county, the township's portion of this was to offer a tax abatement, in essence, a temporary, we temporarily, for a period of years, ignore the investment. So this company invests 50 million, we act as if it doesn't occur, and they're not taxed on that in the short term. In the long term, the intent would be that he would be taxed, but of course, since then, the property tax laws in the state of Michigan have changed, so its impact is somewhat limited. But in exchange, there was a notion, well, they were supposed to hire residents. I know that originally, when Young Fung invested in the area, prior to my time as supervisor, the supervisor at that time encouraged Young Fung to have a job fair, which they did, to interview people when they were establishing the business. So there's certainly an effort made, but there was no stipulation or requirement that they only hire residents of Harrison Township. So we wouldn't have heard about that because we don't have that ability, as far as I know, to say that they have to hire residents of the township in order to get the tax abatement. So, and then the size of the district, it's my understanding that it's only those properties that are immediately affected.
Correct, there's 31 properties that abut the existing lighting, and those are the ones that are impacted, so.
Right. And again, no more or no less. We're talking about an existing district that's been in place
Well,
for
it's a,
probably 40, 50 years.
it's a portion of an existing district.
Okay.
So, but there, it includes all, the existing district includes all the properties, but this portion of the cost is only being assessed against those individuals who are
Gotcha.
impacted by the executive drive lights.
I see. Gotcha. So there you go, clarification. Hopefully that answered those questions. Are there any other, did I miss something, or any other comments, or? All right. Hearing none, we've got a motion by Mr. Tominello with support by Mr. Batanti to adopt the resolution setting the public hearing for the redetermination of costs for the Executive Drive street lighting special assessment, which will be held on June 13th, 2016. Mr. Witt, will you please take a roll call?
Mr. Tominello?
Yes.
Mr. Patanti?
Yes.
Mr. Brado is excused. Mr. Caprell?
Yes.
Mr. York is excused. Mr. Witt, yes. Mr. Verkest?
Yes. Thank you. Next on the agenda are some appointments and reappointments. First, item D1, Mr. Witt.
Yes, my office has received a request from Lake St. Clair Metro Park to reappoint Mr. Matthew Carr and Mr. Donald Hibbert, and to appoint Ms. Gina Cozzolino as ordinance officers for the Metro Park for 2016. These are each a one-year appointment. The appointments allow these individuals to write tickets for township ordinance violations within the boundaries of the park.
All right. And this is something that's been in place for countless years.
Correct.
Okay.
And I guess, if I may, the reason that it's in front of us is because we're giving authority to these individuals. Now, we're not choosing these individuals, they're being brought forward by the
Correct.
authority.
Within our code of ordinances, there's an entire section that governs the boundaries of Lake St. Clair Metro Park, and this gives them the authority to act as ordinance officers and issue tickets within those boundaries and within those ordinances specifically.
All right. Is there a motion?
Motion to reappoint Mr. Matthew Carr and Mr. Donald Hibbert, and appoint Ms. Gina Cozzolino as ordinance officers for Lake St. Clair Metro Park, each for a term of 1 year, expiring May 31st, 2000. Should be 17?
17, yeah.
17, yep.
I'll support that.
All right. Support by Mr. Tominello. Discussion, board members? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, board. Next on the agenda, item D2. Board members, the appointments for the Building Board of Appeals members have expired. The Building Board of Appeals has the responsibility of hearing any appeals from residents and property owners in the township who wish to appeal a decision of the building department or building official. By law, Building Board of Appeals members must have experience or training in the building trades. All three BBA members have current experience in municipal building, civil engineering, and commercial instruction. Mr. Badkins is employed in the commercial construction field. Mr. Jacob has worked for and in both the municipal and civil engineering fields. And Mr. Vyzenko is currently the building official in another community in Macomb County. I recommend the reappointment of all three applicants for staggered terms to expire May 9th, 2017, May 9th, 2018, and May 9th, 2019. Is there a motion or discussion?
Make a motion to approve the reappointments, correct?
Yeah, reappointments.
Reappointments to the Building Board of Appeals, Mr. Brian Batkins for a one-year term to expire May 9th, 2017, Mr. Roger Jacob for a two-year to expire May 9th, 2018, and Mr. Vyzenko for a three-year term to expire May 9th, 2019.
All right, is there support?
Support.
All right, we got a motion by Mr. Witt, with support by Mr. Bertanti. Discussion, board members? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, board. Next on the agenda, item E1. Board members, at our March 14th, 2016 regular board meeting, the board approved the posting of the senior account bookkeeper position in the Water and Sewer Department. We had two internal applicants, and while both interviewed well, the interview committee agreed that Mrs. Martha Bobsine was best suited for the position. I'm asking the board to promote Mrs. Martha Bobsine to the position of senior account booker and bookkeeper in the Water and Sewer Department at a starting salary of $41,322.55, and I'm gonna ask that it be effective May 12th, 2016. I was off a day on the payroll change. It's easiest if we make a change when one payroll period stops and the next begins, so be changing that to, from 11 to 12.
Motion to promote Mrs. Martha Bobsine to the position of senior account bookkeeper in the Water and Sewer Department at a salary of $41,322.55, effective 5/12/16.
All right, is there support?
Support.
All right, we got a motion by Mr. Tominello, a support by Mr. Caprell. Discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. The next two items are somewhat related. Board members, the primary role of our senior account bookkeeper, I should say, the title senior account bookkeeper is a pre-established, one of the several pre-established titles within the bargaining unit contract. This position is primarily responsible, amongst several things, one of the things this position, or the person who holds this position is responsible for commercial account billing for the Water and Sewer Department. That's a cycle that occurs pretty much every 2 months, and so May is a billing cycle. And so we have two things going on here. One is next agenda item addresses the request for temporary help for the current person who's retiring to be able to assist on a temporary basis, something we've done in the past. And then the next item would be Mrs. Bobsine's position is now vacated. And as you know from prior board motions, we've gone through the process of posting and advertising, interviewing that job. We've been very fortunate to have several good candidates, but not had a chance to have a candidate before you today. So there's a likelihood that at the next meeting, or certainly a future meeting, we may be discussing someone to fill that position. But the next agenda item, E2, is regarding temporary help. So at the March 14, 2016 regular board meeting, I reported to the board that Ms. Cheryl Lombardo announced her retirement effective April 29, 2016. She agreed to continue to work in her capacity as senior account bookkeeper in the Water and Sewer Department through May 10th, which is through tomorrow, in order to assist with the current commercial billing cycle. This commercial billing cycle really lasts pretty much through Friday, May 13th. So Miss Lombardo has been training with Mrs. Bobsine, and the next billing cycle for that commercial billing takes place during the first week and first 2 weeks of July. Miss Lombardo has agreed to make herself available to assist with any training or questions, Miss Lombardo, I'm sorry, Mrs. Bobsine, and I'm asking for an approval for up to 80 hours of temporary help in the water and sewer department at Ms. Lombardo's current rate of $23.80 per hour. So in essence, I'm asking for a bank of up to 80 hours so that for the balance of this week, as well as for a handful of days in July, in the event that Mrs. Bobsine has questions, she might say, okay, I've gone this far, are you willing to come in maybe this Wednesday and assist me on something? But it's a limited bank, and it's at her current rate of pay.
Supervisor, just a question, the $23.80 per hour, that's with no benefits, is that correct?
That's correct. That is literally, in essence, that's the rate that she was making April 29th, the date of her retirement. So we've historically, when we've asked folks to come back, offered to pay them their rate, but no inflated rate, there's no vacation time, there's no, sick time that's being earned. It's just a flat rate per hour times the hours worked.
Right, and we had originally budgeted for Mrs. Lombardo or for that position we have a budget through the end of the year at some $46,000 a year, which is what that is. So the new rate of $41,000 plus approximately $2,000 in temporary help would still put us under that budget.
Correct.
Is that correct? I just
Yep.
threw the math. Okay.
Yep, absolutely. So if we look at the budget that we approved for the three clerical positions, certainly one clerical position's not affected. One clerical position is Miss Lombardo, who's retiring at the highest rate of pay with longevity and other benefits associated with it. So we've budgeted for that higher rate, whereas Mrs. Bobsine, when she moves into that position, will move in at a lower rate based on steps and based on the fact that with a tiered contract, that new hire or Mrs. Bobsine would never receive the rate that Ms. Lombardo is receiving. So we will experience savings for the balance of this year, but in addition, Mrs. Bobsine's seat is empty, and although we may very well likely be back 2 weeks from now filling that, not only will we experience a vacancy in that position for some period of time, but whoever we hire won't be at the same rate as Mrs. Bobsine. So between this process, well, in essence, what we're trying to do is make sure that we've given everyone a chance to cross-train, but the net result is that we'll finish the year under our budgeted amounts.
I think it's a wise use of the expenditure, will still be under budget, and I think that the added training could hopefully help avoid any mistakes and inconveniences to our residents. So I think it's a reasonable idea.
All right?
I agree, I mean, this type of training is invaluable. Anyway, I will make a motion to approve up to 80 hours of temporary help for Ms. Cheryl Lombardo in the Water and Sewer Department at a rate of $23.80 an hour with no benefits.
All right, is there support?
Support.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Tominello, excuse me, with support by Mr. Batanti. We had some discussion. Is there further discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. That completes our action items on the agenda. Next are public comments. We open up the floor for public comments. They can be about any subject, and we ask that you limit them to 5 minutes in length.
Joy Boris, Ashby Preserve, Foxwood Court. I just have some questions. Where is this garage sale? I didn't get the information on that. That was one of my questions. And another one is the Shores cleanup. Is there information online about that? And the summer shuttle, if you could give the phone number, or if there's information on that. And my main reason I'm up here, I wanted to know, last meeting, there was mention about a Phragmites project and that Harrison Township would be included. And I'm wondering if there's any more information on that and where I could get more information. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim Sunstock, 31698 San Juan. I'm going to be short tonight. I'm just going to announce that Venice Shores Property Owners Association is having their garage sale also this weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Venice Shores is located off of North River Road. There'll be signs posted at the entrances to the subdivision, and hopefully in combination with Huron Point, we can get a really big crowd of people that come out to Harrison Township. Thank you.
Thank you.
William Bardell, 19-year resident, new kid on the block, taxpayer, new breed. If you guys go back and look at your 10/14/2014 video on this thing Al Gore invented, no, he didn't invent it, but this thing called the internet. Adam, you stated repair and repaving. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Repair and repaving, go back on 10/14/2014, look at the video. And the nice lady came up and talked from the State Economic Department. That's all I'm going to talk about that. The other thing, I reached out to the Herb Foundation and talked about the dumping in Lake St. Clair, and basically called John H. Herb, the president, and he basically sent me to one of his, I don't know what you want to call him, PR person or whatever, and I pretty much got generic answers. So enough about that. I've got other things that in the works that are coming up and that we're doing. One of the things that I want to let everybody know about is the Save Lake St. Clair is going to be having a meeting this Thursday, May 12th, from 7 to 9 at the Walter F. Bruce Hall. It's the VFW Hall, Walter F. Bruce Hall, in St. Clair Shores. That's going to be at 28404 Jefferson. That's 28404 Jefferson. And that's east of Jefferson, south of Martin Road, which is 11.5-mile road. And everyone's invited to come out, share ideas. Again, that's 28404 Jefferson, St. Clair Shores. That's south of 11.5-mile road, east of Jefferson. And if you need any further information or you can give me a call, you can call me at 586-610-4342. Again, my phone number is 586-610-4342. If you need additional information or you have thoughts, ideas, feelings, or whatnot, you can give me a call and I will return your phone call. Also, I would also like to invite everybody to check out SaveLakeSt. and Save Lake St. Clair on Facebook. And that's all I have for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, board members. My name is Chris Burden. I live on Lake Shore. As you know, I'm a candidate for treasurer. I just wanted to formally introduce myself, give you a little background. 30 years I've been working at FCA, formerly Chrysler. Plan on retiring at the end of the year. Different capacities there, finance, customer service, sales. I've also was on the Macomb County Sheriff ATV Reserve Unit for 6.5 years. Gave that up in 2012. Licensed real estate agent. I'm also enrolled in the fall classes for grant writing and grant management. I think we could do a lot more grant writing here in Harrison Township, especially with the fire department, maybe even the library. So I just wanted to formally introduce myself, thank everybody for allowing me to meet you earlier, and appreciate the comment.
Thank you.
Good evening, board members. Jim Watisha, 31375 North River Road. Most of you guys up here know me, a couple of you, one of you don't, I don't believe. I met you last week, but I am running for the clerk's position. Most of you guys know me. I live in Harrison Township for 12 years. I live in Venice Shore subdivision. Retired from City Roads Engineering, 28 and a half years. My phone number, if anybody has questions for me, 586-468-4289. And I look forward to working with you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Sarah Brown, and I live on Shoreline Drive in Harrison Township. I'm here tonight to follow up on a letter that I sent to Mr. Verkest, Supervisor Verkest, on April 26th, in which I expressed my hopes that he would forward a request to the Planning Commission and Mr. Tominello to just review the Animal Ordinance, Chapter 14, for the purpose of considering allowing egg-laying hens in Harrison Township. Many communities around have chicken ordinances. Madison Heights, Ferndale, Grand Rapids, Port Huron, Ann Arbor, Ypsilanti. They all use basically the same 6 or 7 points that keep things kind of under control. You don't allow roosters. You limit the number of hens, usually between 3 and 6. You have to contain them in a pen, can't have them roaming about. Very simply, you have to keep it clean. And that's, you don't want to be creating any sort of smells that are unpleasant to your neighbors. A certain distance from residences, usually 25 to 50 feet, depending on the area that you're in and the size of the yards. So I thought, what kind of hurdles would make you not want to consider this? And there are a few simple myths. They don't attract rats. That's what some people think, they attract rats. They don't. They're way bigger than a rat. They actually eat the rats. And rats are looking for garbage laying about. They're not looking to go attack something that's 5 times its size. Noise levels, people think, oh, it's going to be noisy and it's going to be unpleasant for the neighbors. The sound that a chicken makes for maybe 1 to 2 minutes a day, never at night, is about the same sound as my voice, about 70 decibels. So it's not going to be annoying to the neighbors. And then the other big one is going to be stinky. And chickens themselves don't smell. It's their waste that smells. So as with anything, a person who doesn't clean them after their dog, cat, whatever, there's a propensity to create a little stench. However, you can use chicken fertilizer for many things, including creating a very organic fertilizer that does not contribute to the toxicity of our neighborhoods. You can use it as on your mulch in your yard instead of chemicals. So and then the final one I thought about is, well, maybe the Planning Commission doesn't have time. Maybe it's a lot of work to review an ordinance. And so that's why, if it would please the township, I would be happy to volunteer my services to do any research that would be necessary just to review the ordinance. I understand that, if I'm understanding correctly, the way it works is that if Mr. Verkest agrees, then Mr. Tominello would create a review of some sort and then bring it back to the board for approval. So what I am asking is, would it be possible just for the review process to go forward? Thank you.
Seeing no other public comment, we'll move back to board comment, and I'll try to answer the residents' questions. The very first question was regarding the Huron Point subdivision garage sale, Mr. Tominello.
Yes, Huron Point is located off South River Road, and that would be east of Jefferson subdivision, right behind Metro Beach.
So you just keep going on South River Road, and if you get wet, back up about a half a mile and make a right. So large subdivision though, off on the right-hand side, and I'm sure there'd be signage that
Yes,
indicates
yes.
that sale. So this Saturday and Sunday, you said?
Yes.
So if you head out South River Road, about as far as you can go, you're gonna catch the signs there. The shore cleanup, there is information on the shore cleanup on the website, so that's one of the slides that we have rotating. It's an annual cleanup that we've done certainly as long as I've been on the board, which is coming up on 8 years, but I know prior to that as well.
I was involved in that last year. I got introduced to waders, which I had never worn before, and the use of pitchforks. I got quite a workout in 4 hours,
Yep.
standing waist deep in the water.
Sure.
Not sure how much waste I removed, but the next day I certainly felt
Hopefully,
it.
hopefully some of your own.
I can certainly tell you I felt it after
Sure.
4 hours in the water.
The number for the shuttle is 586 612-4454. 612-4454. It is on the shuttle. We do have brochures that have that number, and we also, I can say, you know, a number of the businesses, I guess you might say promote it, marinas, things like that. It not only assists residents, but folks who are temporary summertime residents in the form of boat owners who are at our marinas, or transient boaters who may be stopping on a larger trip on their boat, and they have the ability to catch the shuttle during the day and go pick up supplies, things like that, maybe get groceries, that sort of thing. Specific to the Phragmites, the the process has been a lengthy process. We began, I don't know if it was a year ago, but maybe the better part of a year ago, in working in conjunction with SEMCOG. They were really the spearhead of this SISMA and the primary push to address Phragmites. We were awarded the grant, and one component in the grant, and part of the reason why we got the grant, or I should say the area got the grant, was that we agreed to hire and employ a coordinator so that each community isn't going out and trying to reinvent Phragmites treatment. Instead, we have the ability to kind of pool our resources. We each give up, in essence, a little bit of our grant in exchange for having that coordinator. The Stewardship Network is a nonprofit agency, environmentally, oriented agency that, as a part of that grant, agreed to employ this individual. So they're currently going through the application and job search process to find someone with the kind of background and education to be able to fulfill the coordinator responsibility. I know that I have a meeting this Wednesday at 1 o'clock. So the short answer is I'm sure I'll learn more on Wednesday, just where we are in that process. I've begun the process in the supervisor's office. I've got a large poster board of the township, a foam board, and as I receive feedback from residents saying this area or that area is a concern with both Phragmites and county drains, because we're in the process of looking at that as well. We're adding push pins on there to try to make sure that when the time comes, we make sure that, for example, in the case of Phragmites, that we focus on particular areas that we know are concerns to our residents, or we know are concerns from our own observations. So I will make a point to add a push pin to Ashby Preserve. And then also another resident reminded us or notified us of the Venice Shores garage sale. And again, just as he mentioned, it's on North River Road. Likewise, just keep going east on North River Road. Really, it's just past Mac Ray's, but I'm sure there's signage there to get folks. So hop over Bridgeview, make a right if you're coming from this side of the river, and it'll be on your left-hand side. Let's see. And then lastly, there were some other folks that made announcements, and I don't have any response for that, but the one resident made mention of the hen ordinance. So I can say this, kind of in line with what she'd mentioned, that I've tried to do some research myself to see whether we like it or not. Municipalities tend to like to copy or plagiarize, so no sense in reinventing the wheel when it comes to this issue. I can say that during my time as a board member, I have heard from other people that have been interested in keeping hens, but I haven't heard from a lot of them. This is something that pops up probably once a year, but it doesn't mean, as the resident pointed out, it doesn't mean that it can't be done. I think there are definitely some challenges, because I think it's fair to say that a majority of our residents may not be in pursuit of a modification to our ordinance to allow us to keep hens. So, this is kind of a narrow thing. But I do know, it's a matter of fact. There's probably folks right now in the township that have a small coop and have a couple of egg-laying hens, and the neighbors, they're typically in areas where there's a little bit more acreage, a little bit more space between the neighbors, but I don't get complaints about it. I know we had a resident that was keeping goats. That was kind of a concern. We did hear about that one. But it is something that we can take a look at. It does go, if an ordinance were to be drafted for it, it would be in conjunction with the planning commission, but I think the responsibility ultimately does fall on the board of trustees, as you pointed out. And I think the resident pointed out something important, and that is that there's, sometimes we have a propensity to, to pick the worst in something and disregard it because of bad players. And she made a parallel to keeping dogs. And every once in a while, you see something on the news where someone just has a whole house full of dogs and cats, and the home has to be demolished. It doesn't prevent us all from keeping dogs or cats. The majority of us are responsible and keep them in a responsible manner. So we haven't thrown out the rights of all dog and cat owners. The only difference in that parallel is that there's probably, if we were to have an ordinance that allows it, we probably wouldn't have hundreds or thousands of hens in township like we may have with dogs or cats. So it is something I have been doing some research on and trying to find out just, how does this work? How much of a problem? I can also say I've been fortunate, SEMCOG and MTA are both resources that we have. SEMCOG is Southeastern Michigan Council of Governments, so this covers 6 or 7 counties in southeast Michigan. MTA is a little bit different because that's all of Michigan, and certainly a majority of the 1,240 townships probably do allow egg-laying hens because they're in largely rural areas. But they're both resources that I've looked to say what can be done. So, but admittedly, it's not, I hope this doesn't sound callous, but it's not a front burner issue. Nobody's knocking down my door. Right now, drains are a big issue, roads are a big issue. Water in yards and the high water table and bridges and, but I certainly haven't discarded or forgotten about it. I'm trying to do some research. Any other comments? No? If nothing else, I'd be looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, is there support?
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Meeting adjourned. Thank you, board.